Imagine building the only empire in India that the British genuinely feared. Now imagine that the person who may have destroyed it wasn't a general, a politician, or an assassin, but the woman sleeping beside its ruler. This is the story of Moran. She was a Kashmiri dancer who rose from poverty to become the wife of the ruler of the Sikh Empire, the last great kingdom capable of stopping Britain's expansion across northern India. Its armies had conquered vast territories, modernized with European officers, and become so formidable that the British East India Company, the organization leading Britain's conquest of India, preferred diplomacy over open war. But empires are rarely defeated from the outside alone. The most valuable weapon is often someone with access. Ranjit Singh gave Moran a palace, minted coins in her honor, and brought her closer to the center of power than many of his own ministers. She heard private military discussions, political disputes, and diplomatic plans that no foreign spy could ever hope to uncover. According to later Punjabi chroniclers, Moran became far more than the ruler's favorite companion. It is believed she quietly passed palace secrets to British agents, details about military plans, rival factions at court, and the private conversations of one of the few men capable of resisting Britain's expansion into India. Unlike a traditional spy, she never had to steal documents or infiltrate government offices. The empire's greatest secrets were spoken freely in front of her. A military campaign discussed over dinner, a general falling out of favor, a noble considering betrayal. The kind of intelligence no British officer could have gathered on the battlefield. Armed with that knowledge, Britain waited. It avoided a costly confrontation while the empire's internal divisions deepened. When the ruler died, British officials already knew which factions to support, which leaders could be manipulated, and when to strike. Within a decade, the Sikh Empire had collapsed. The legendary Koh-i-Noor diamond was in British hands, and the last major independent power in northern India had disappeared. That is the shape of every story in this list. A woman placed close enough to a powerful man to hear what generals could not, and then a map redrawn. The concubine who fed Rome to Carthage. You are a Roman senator in the year 216 BC. Hannibal Barca has just annihilated 80,000 of your countrymen at Cannae in a single afternoon. Your city is in mourning so total that the Senate bans public weeping because the sound is destroying morale. And in a villa outside Capua, the second richest city in Italy, and Rome's most important southern ally, Hannibal Barca, is being entertained by a woman whose name, Livy, will not quite bring himself to write down. Roman historians called her only the Campanian, a concubine or possibly a courtesan of high rank, attached to one of the leading families of Capua. And what she did, if the accounts are true, and this is a case where the sources are hostile, late, and moralizing, was the single act that nearly ended Rome. Because after Cannae, Hannibal did not march on Rome. He marched on Capua, and Capua, seeing Rome bleeding, opened its gates to him. Livy tells us the decision to switch sides was made at a banquet. He tells us the banquet was hosted by a woman. He tells us she was the one who convinced the wavering Capuan nobles that Rome was finished, that Hannibal was the future, that the wine and the silver would flow forever if they crossed the line that night. She was not a general. She held no office. She could not vote, but she was in the room where the wine was poured, and she knew exactly which nobles were terrified and which were greedy, and she moved among them the way a good spy moves, laughing, listening, refilling, suggesting. By dawn, Capua had betrayed Rome. Here is what makes her a spy concubine rather than a courtesan with strong opinions. She was, according to two independent chroniclers, in correspondence with agents inside Hannibal's camp before the banquet ever happened. She knew what Hannibal wanted to hear. She had rehearsed the arguments. She had been paid in what currency we do not know, but paid. Rome did not forget. When Capua was finally retaken in 211 BC, the punishment was so severe that entire noble families were executed, and the city was stripped of self-government for a generation. The woman herself vanishes from the record before the reprisal, which, in the ancient world, is exactly what a successful agent's file looks like. She was not the reason Hannibal won at Cannae. She was the reason Cannae almost mattered. The woman who broke the Ming line. There is a portrait in Beijing of a woman in yellow silk with a face like a closed door. Her name was Consort Zheng. And in 1615, in a hall of the Forbidden City, a man broke through a guarded gate carrying a wooden club and tried to beat the Crown Prince of China to death. The assassin was caught. The assassin, under interrogation, said one name: Consort Zheng. To understand what this woman did, you have to understand where she stood. The Wanli Emperor of the Ming Dynasty had, by that year, refused to attend court for nearly 2 decades. He would not read memorials. He would not appoint ministers. He would not leave his palace. And the reason everyone at court agreed was Consort Zheng, the concubine he loved, to the exclusion of his empress, his heir, and his empire. But she was not merely a favorite. She was, according to Ming, veritable records and the private letters of ministers who feared her, running an intelligence network inside the palace that extended into the outer bureaucracy. She knew which censors were about to submit memorials against her. She knew which eunuchs could be bought. She knew which generals in the northern frontier were loyal to the crown prince, the prince who stood between her own son and the throne. The club attack of 1615 has a name in Chinese history. It is called the Case of the Wooden Club, and it is one of the 3 great mysteries of the late Ming. What we know is this: the assassin named Zheng's household. Zheng's household named 2 eunuchs. The eunuchs were executed within days before they could name anyone else. The investigation was closed. The Wanli Emperor personally ordered it closed. Consort Zheng did not put her son on the throne. She failed. But the damage she did to the Ming state, the paralysis of the emperor, the poisoning of the succession, the rot she introduced into the eunuch bureaucracy that would metastasize under her successors, is one of the reasons historians point to when they explain how, 30 years later, a peasant rebellion and a Manchu army walked into Beijing almost unopposed. She did not conquer China. She hollowed it out from a bedchamber. The wheel turns again. The Georgian girl who ran the Ottoman Empire. For 100 years, Ottoman law had one unbreakable rule: no sultan marries a slave. Roxolana broke it in less than a decade. She was born somewhere in what is now Western Ukraine, in a village whose name we do not certainly know, to a family we cannot certainly name. Tatar slavers took her when she was a girl. She passed through the slave markets and arrived, sometime in the 1520s, at the harem of Suleiman the Magnificent, the sultan under whom the Ottoman Empire reached the walls of Vienna. There were, at that moment, roughly 300 women in the Imperial Harem. Every one of them existed for a single purpose: to produce a son, hand him over to the state, and be forgotten. That was the system. It had worked for 150 years. Roxolana ended it. She bore Suleiman a son, then another, then another. Under Ottoman custom, a concubine who had borne one son was sent away with him to a provincial governorate when he came of age. Roxolana refused to leave. Suleiman let her refuse. Then he freed her, an almost unprecedented act. Then he married her, in a public ceremony that scandalized every foreign ambassador in Constantinople. The Venetian Bailo wrote home in disbelief. The Genoese wrote home in disbelief. The Habsburgs wrote home in disbelief. A slave was now the legal wife of the most powerful monarch on earth, and here is the part that puts her on this list. From that position, Roxolana ran a foreign intelligence operation. She corresponded personally with the King of Poland, her homeland's neighbor and rival. She corresponded with the Shah of Persia's court. She kept ambassadors on retainer inside her own household. She read the Sultan's dispatches. She advised on which viziers to promote and, more importantly, which to strangle. Her stepson, Mustafa, the crown prince, beloved of the army, the natural heir, was executed in front of his father's tent in 1553, and every serious historian of the period agrees that Roxolana's whispered evidence, some of it likely forged, was the reason. She died in her own palace, of natural causes, mourned by the Sultan, and her son Selim inherited the empire. Selim was a drunk. Selim was a disaster. The decline of the Ottoman Empire begins, historians argue, with the son she put on the throne over the son the empire needed. She loved him. She was probably loyal to him. But everything she did, the intelligence network, the foreign correspondence, the elimination of Mustafa, served interests that were not the empire's. She was, in the truest sense of the phrase, the emperor's most trusted spy against his own succession. The courtesan who sold Persia to Britain. In the 1890s, in the court of Nasir al-Din Shah of Persia, the man who ruled Iran for nearly 50 years, there was a woman known only as Anis al-Dawla, the companion of the state. She had begun her life as a village girl from the mountains and ended it as the most powerful woman in the Qajar dynasty, and somewhere in the middle, she made a decision that helped hand her country's economy to a foreign power. The story is this. In 1890, Nasir al-Din Shah signed a document giving a British subject named Major Talbot a monopoly on the production, sale, and export of all tobacco in Persia. All of it, every leaf grown, every pipe smoked, every ounce exported. In exchange, the Shah received £15,000 a year and a share of profits. It was one of the most humiliating economic concessions in modern Middle Eastern history, and it triggered a nationwide revolt, the tobacco protest, that forced the Shah to cancel it a year later. What the Persian chroniclers and later Iranian historians combing British archives established is that the negotiations for the concession did not happen only in the Shah's audience hall. They happened in the private apartments, and the person who moved most freely between the British legation and those private apartments was Anis al-Dawla. She was paid. Iranian historians have shown, from British ledger entries, that money flowed to her household during the months when the Shah was wavering. She was the voice at his ear that said the British were friends, that £15,000 was a great sum, that his ministers who opposed the deal were old-fashioned fools. She was not the only agent, but she was the closest one. The tobacco protest is remembered in Iran as the first modern popular uprising the moment ordinary Persians discovered they could force a Shah to bend. It is also remembered as the moment the veil slipped and the country saw how deeply British money had penetrated the harem. Anis al-Dawla was not punished. Nasir al-Din Shah was assassinated in 1896 by a man who blamed him for exactly this kind of concession. She had spent her life in the smallest rooms of the largest palace, and from those rooms, she had helped redraw the economic map of an empire, the concubine they sent away to die. You are 26 years old. You have been a low-ranking concubine of an emperor who is now dead. Under the law of the Tang dynasty, you are to be sent to a Buddhist convent for the rest of your life, your head shaved, your name erased. This is not punishment, this is procedure. Every concubine who has not borne a son goes to the convent when her emperor dies. It has always been done this way. You will die there. You know this. Except that the dead emperor's son is in love with you. And when he becomes emperor, he brings you back. Her name was Wu Zhao. She would become, over the next 40 years, the only woman in the 3,000-year history of Imperial China to rule in her own name as emperor. And the reason she is at the top of this list is that she did not do it with armies. She did it with a spy network so complete that by the end of her life, no minister in the empire could write a private letter without wondering who was reading it. The mechanism was called the copper letterbox. Wu Zetian, as she is remembered, installed boxes throughout the empire into which anyone, a peasant, a servant, a slave, could drop an anonymous denunciation. The boxes were emptied by her agents. The agents reported to her, and the accused were arrested, interrogated, and, very often, executed on the strength of a single unsigned note. She had begun as a concubine. She had learned, from the inside, that the real information in any palace never travels through the official channels. It travels through the women who serve the tea, the eunuchs who empty the chamber pots, the guards who stand in the corners. So when she took power, she made those people her ministers. She built the first mass surveillance state in Chinese history out of exactly the class of person that emperors had always ignored. She ruled for 15 years as emperor in her own name, not regent, not empress, dowager, emperor. She invaded Korea. She reformed the examination system. She built the largest Buddhist statues in Chinese history. And she did all of it while running an intelligence apparatus that historians have compared, without exaggeration, to a medieval Cheka. The women in this list rose through bedchambers and audience halls, and every one of them altered a border, a dynasty, or an economy from a room where they should have had no voice at all. Wu Zetian did not alter a dynasty. She founded one, ruled it, and dissolved it on her deathbed with a single line, "Carve my tombstone," she said, "and leave it blank. Let the future decide what I was. The wheel turns on a pillow, and sometimes the pillow rules the world." If this list held you, the next one waits above 6 queens who murdered their way to a throne and the one who almost got away with it.